Hey there, happy Sunday. Day of the sun, first day of the week. And I think it's so powerful when we focus ourselves in on the first day of the week onto a concept or a topic that we can reflect on and grow with. And so this week I'm going to kick off having a topic. And really it's going to be an area I've identified for myself, but I'm going to share it, that I think really supports happiness and growing happiness and mental freedom and moving about the world in a different way, feeling good. And so the topic for this week, trust. Because you can't move about the world if you don't have trust that you are sort of in an environment of well-being and safety. And you also can't pull your power back from the world and realize that the world is a result of me rather than me being a result of the world unless I trust myself, my thinking, my mind, that I am the source of creation and what is happening. So we're going to start with trust, and we're going to go to the masters and see what they have to say on this for us today. I'm going to start with a quote from Abraham and Esther. It says, it came into my inbox this morning and actually is what got me kind of chewing on this and took me in this direction. It says, it is your rules that make unlawful beings. You would get along better if you trusted each other to treat each other appropriately, but you don't. So you keep making laws until you make criminals out of everyone. And this really impressed me because the only other place I've heard that is actually the Tao Te Ching. And I've been noticing more and more how people are very focused on personal safety, saying the world's going to hell in a handbasket. If you go on Nextdoor or social media, you'll see it's all about cameras and criminals and people breaking in and this constant sense that somebody is out to get us. But I have personally found that when you trust people, you know, if my waiter hands me the bill and I take out my card and say, it's okay, I trust you, and I don't even look at it, they handle it in a completely different scenario because I am speaking to the real person. At our core, we are all good people who are trustworthy. And when you see that in someone and you focus there, that's what comes out. When we are constantly assuming that people are out to get us, then they're going to show up in an untrustworthy fashion. And when we put the power in the rules and the laws, we think that's going to protect us. We show a general distrust and mistrust of the world. We believe the worst about other people, and so that's what shows up. But let's let the Tao speak to us a little bit more about it. So it says, to govern the nation. Govern, and this is the Tao Te Ching is in little verses, so I'm just going to read this verse about governing the nation. Govern the nation with correctness. Resort to arms with surprise maneuvers. Obtain the land under heaven without tiring the people. How do I know this? Because the more rules there are in the country, the poorer the people will become. The more power the people hold, the more confused the country will become. Isn't this interesting? I feel like this is something that we're witnessing in our own political breakdown. The more skills and intelligence the people possess, the more valuable goods will be created and the more strict the laws will become. Yet the more thieves and robbers will breed. See, when everybody thinks they know best, it becomes a very confusing environment because we aren't trusting our government, we aren't trusting each other. We're thinking that we have to do everything as this alone little body in a world, an ego all by itself that we have to protect that's constantly in danger. Or our things that make us happy and, you know, give us our power. Someone could take that because we're always putting the power outside of ourselves in something that's vulnerable, in a world that's vulnerable. That is why the sage says, I do nothing, and the people are nurtured by themselves. I do not tire people and drain the treasury, and the people become rich by themselves. I prefer quietness, and the people behave correctly by themselves. I have no desire, and the people return to the simple life by themselves. I have no emotions, and the people become pure by themselves. This is speaking into a few things. One thing, power, that when we give people their power back and we trust them, there's a relationship there that everything straightens out on its own. And it's also pointing at the reflective nature of the world, that when I'm at peace, when I don't need anything from anyone, or I'm not making anyone outside of me wrong or small or big or whatever it is, that everything just kind of straightens out. That's what this is talking about. When I don't assume the worst about people, they become pure on their own. But let's let Alan speak into it a little bit more. Huh? So this is Alan Watts. He's always amazing. And Nature, Man and Woman is a very Taoist-based text. I'm just going to read a couple pages. That our life is a dissolving moment in which there is nothing to grasp and no one to grasp. It is the negative way of saying something which also may be said positively. Okay, so what's a dissolving moment in which there's nothing to grasp and no one to grasp? So saying it in a positive way would be everything to grasp and everyone to grasp. But the positive way, he says, is not quite so effective and forceful and lends itself more easily to misunderstanding, which is very true. The sense that there is something to be grasped rests upon the seeming duality of the ego and its experience. But the reason why there is nothing to be grasped is that this duality is only seeming, so that the attempt to cling is like trying to bite the teeth with the teeth, or to clutch the hand with the hand. The corollary of this realization is that subject and object, oneself and the world, are a unity, or to be precise, a non-duality, since the word unity may be taken to exclude diversity. So in other words, we're connected, we're one. It's not, I'm here as a little body and the world's out to get me. It's happening at the same time. We're connected. There's a unity between what's occurring and ourselves. But the ego won't have you believe that. It'll have you believe that it's separate. The sense of the vast gulf between the ego and the world disappears, and one's subjective inner life seems no longer to be separate from everything else, from one's total experience of the stream of nature. It becomes simply obvious that everything is the Tao, an integrated, harmonious, and universal process from which it is absolutely impossible to deviate. This sensation is marvelous, to put it mildly, though there is no logical reason why it should be so, unless it is just through a release from the chronic feeling of having to face reality. For here one does not face life anymore, one simply is it. And that's what we're seeing here in the Tao Te Ching, right? It says, I have no desire, and the people return to the simple life by themselves. I stay quiet and the people behave correctly by themselves. I have no emotions and the people become pure by themselves. And I think no emotions really means no attachment or not grasping at anything. And that's what he's saying. It's not a separate life that's happening out there to get me. It's all part of it. I am part of what's happening. But things are not usually felt to be marvelous unless they are full of consequence, unless they lead to definitive changes in practical life. So when this sensation first dawns upon people that you're, part of everything, as it often does quite unexpectedly, they are apt to expect all kinds of results from it, which is why it vanishes as swiftly as it comes. Because once you start grasping or you're doing something to get a result, it's very different than when it just is. As soon as we're doing something to get something, whether it's happiness, right? Whether it's views, whether it's safety, whether it's money, whatever it is, once we're doing it to get something, the energy about it changes. The magic goes out of it. Rather than just appreciating the moment and realizing it's a dissolving moment, there's really nothing to hold on to and nothing to grasp. Everything you see will pass, and just enjoying it for what it is. But that doesn't have a lot of consequence, so it doesn't feel super marvelous to us. So when the feeling feels so powerful, what he's saying is we expect everything to change rather than just appreciating the experience for what it is, a beautiful experience. So they expected to change their characters to make them better, stronger, wiser, and happier. For they believe that they have grasped something immensely valuable and go bouncing around as if they had inherited a fortune. A Zen master once asked, what is the most valuable thing in the world? He answered, the head of a dead cat. Why? Because no one can put a price on it. The realization of the unity of the world is like this dead cat's head. It is the most priceless, the most inconsequential thing of all. It has no results, no implications, and no logical meaning. I was thinking about this and realizing, if I see a dead cat's head, I'll often immediately assign it meaning and think about the life or, it suffered or all these things that I have no idea about. And in that, I make it something and I make it much more meaningful and painful than it needs to be. Like I said here, it doesn't mean anything. One cannot get a hold get anything out of it because it is impossible to take a position outside it from which to reach in and grasp it. The whole notion of gain, whether it be the gain of wealth or the gain of knowledge and virtue, is like stopping the pangs of hunger by gobbling oneself up from the toes. Yet we do it anyhow, for it really makes no difference whether it's one's toes or a roast duck. The satisfaction is always momentary. There's always a fleeting sense. As the Upanishads say, Anand Brahman, food is Brahman, I the food, eat, the eater of food. We are all eating ourselves like the serpent Ouroboros, and the only real disappointment comes from expecting to get something from it. Doing something to get something. This is why the Buddha said to his disciple, Subhuti, I gained absolutely nothing from unsurpassed and perfect awakening. It's not interesting. The Buddha said he gained nothing from perfect awakening. Why? Because you realize there really is nothing to grasp and nothing to get. On the other hand, when there is no expectation, no looking for a result, and nothing gained but this head of a dead cat, there is quite suddenly and gratuitously, quite miraculously and unreasonably, more than one had ever sought. It's in the attainment of the beingness or the experience of oneness with everything, rather than being separate and divided and different. This is not a matter of renunciation and repressing desire, those traps which the clever and cunning lay for gods. This is interesting. Once you're resisting, you're renunciating and repressing desire, then you're pushing against and you've got resistance again. And as soon as you've got resistance, you're not connected with everything. One cannot renounce life for the same reason that one cannot gain from it. As it is said in the Ching Tao Ke, you cannot take hold of it, but you cannot lose it. In not being able to get it, you get it. When you are silent, it speaks. And when you speak, it is silent. And I love the way Alan starts to pull at the ego issue, that a lot of this, people are out to get me and I can't trust, has to do with the fact that I think I'm separate from others. Because if you ask someone, they'll be like, well, I'm trustworthy. I'm not a criminal. I'm not going to take anything. But there's a connection between it. And so as long as we're seeing ourselves as separate and different, we can't get that, and we continue to suffer and feel vulnerable and alone. Now we're going to take it over into Buddhism with the tick here. He talks about labels. We are separated by labels, by words like Israeli, Palestinian, Buddhist, Jew, and Muslim. When we hear one of these words, it evokes an image, and we immediately feel alienated from the other group or person. We've set up many habitual ways of thinking that separate us from each other, and we make each other suffer. So it's important to discover the human being in the other person, and to help the other person discover the human being in us. So there it is, that trust piece. As human beings, we're exactly the same. But the many layers of labels prevent other people from seeing you as a human being. Thinking of yourself as, or calling yourself a Buddhist, can be a disadvantage, because if you wear the title Buddhist, that may be an obstacle which prevents others from discovering the human being in you. We're complex, right? We're little flesh onions. Like I said, we've got so many different layers, so many different parts to us. Nobody is just one thing. It's not like people are good or bad, criminal or law-abiding. All these different labels we have: healthy, unhealthy, crazy, sane. We're all of it in different moments. The same is true whether you're Christian, Jew, or Muslim. This can be an important part of your identity, but it is not the whole of who you are. We have a lot of different parts. And just because someone is religious or spiritual in different ways doesn't make them bad or wrong or perfect either. People are caught in these notions and images, and they cannot recognize each other as human beings. The practice of peeling away all the labels so that the human being can be revealed is truly a practice for peace. As we see everyone as a whole person, we also accept ourselves as a whole person. And as we can trust other people, we trust ourselves. And the more we trust ourselves, the more we trust other people. Because people are very attached to these names and labels, it is important that we use gentle language and loving speech as we talk with people about matters of identity and injustice. Injustice is suffered by both sides in any personal dispute. It is crucial we understand that. And this is very, very key for especially the division here in the West in our country. A lot of times we think our side is being picked on and we're being victimized. And we don't realize that by condemning the other side, we are doing the exact thing to the other side. Anyone I know that is sort of out on the edges of either political party or belief system feels exactly the same, picked on and condemned. They do not see that they are doing the same thing to the other side. And we also don't realize that as long as we are representing victims and feeling sorry for them and validating their experience, that all we're doing is strengthening the experience of victim in others and in ourselves and creating that possibility. It's only when we realize that we can't be victimized and neither can anyone else without believing and attracting it and creating it themselves that we free everyone. But that isn't a very popular sentiment, but it is definitely substantiated in all of the spiritual, metaphysical material. And so it's important, it's so important, especially for us right now, to understand that no matter what anybody believes, they're still a person and they still experience it the same way we do. There isn't a good side and a bad side. Both sides lose. Both sides think they're completely good and that the other side is bad. And so in that, although we're all right how we have it, we have to realize that we don't know how other people have it. And if we're feeling picked on, so are they. Once understanding and compassion are born in our heart, the poisons of anger, violence, hatred, and despair will be transformed. The path is quite clear. The only solution is to get the poisons out and to get the insight and compassion in. Then we will discover each other as human beings, not allowing ourselves to be deceived by the outer layers, by names like Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, pro-American, pro-Arab, and so on. This is a process of liberation from our ideas, our ignorance, our tendency to discriminate. And I love that he's saying this here because it is something that's been going on for thousands of years in human history, that the oppressed become the oppressor. And this is exactly how it happens. We justify vengeance. And in that, we just end up doing exactly what we said we didn't like happening to us. We have to bring compassion into our hearts and realize that everybody feels the same way and that vengeance isn't okay. And until we heal and forgive ourselves and our own experience for everything that's shown up, we're going to continue to project that out and enact vengeance on ourselves and those around us. The earth is so beautiful and there is room enough for us all. Yet we kill each other. But when we can see each other as human beings with their own suffering, we won't have the courage to shoot each other. We'll work together for the chance to live peacefully together. All right, so that was wisdom from the tick. I love him identifying how when we dice ourselves up into little groups and only view a label as a person, which is just one tiny piece of them, how we lose our humanity, and it's so easy to judge them. And when we begin to add compassion and seeing them as a whole person, we open our hearts to see each other as human beings and we start to change the conversation. So now I'm going to shift this over to Neville. He speaks about the Bible from a perspective of a journey to consciousness or enlightenment, and he's going to speak into this a bit. This is from chapter 2 of I Know My Father, called I Come with a Sword. Before you can enter into that peace which passeth all understanding, enlightenment, you must first be slain of all the illusions that now enslave you, the illusions of divisions. If you are identified with race, creed, or color, and hear that with which you are identified criticized and condemned, you will automatically be hurt by such criticism. How wise is this? Like I can say, think of the Me Too movement. As a woman, we're all very focused on being picked on and victimized by the patriarchy. And what happened? Everybody gets all fired up. We think we can be victimized. And then victim shows up everywhere. And the second one story would come out, every woman I knew, especially that was heavily invested in this idea that women as a whole are victims and picked on, would get so upset, even if it had nothing to do with them. It's a story on the news. And we see it in political parties. So if someone is really identified with a political party, the soon as they feel picked on or hear someone saying negative about their party, not to their face or anything about them, they immediately get upset and attack. It's, really what we see with cancel culture. We feel personally attacked by someone because they attacked a label that we identify with. You can do it, the tick was identifying it with faith-based. So if you're faith-based, so if you're a certain faith and you feel someone said something negative about you, the whole world takes issue. Look, even if Muhammad is showed in a certain way on TV, people have actually died for that because some people get so hurt by something they think they're a part of being depicted in a negative way. Every attachment is a bar in your self-created prison. Your only escape lies in non-attachment. You must leave all and follow me. In Christ, there is neither Greek nor Jew, bond nor free. Change your conception of yourself, revalue yourself, and you will automatically change the world. Man has always played the losing game by attempting to change his world while he himself remained with his present values or conceptions of himself. So we'll start to come around full circle here. This really has to do with how I think about myself. And as long as I'm trying to save everybody else or attack everybody else or protect me from everyone else, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to move the needle. And we've been doing it for a couple of thousand years. So I think we can see that now. It's when we change ourselves that the world around us changes. Just like the Tao Te Ching was saying. Jesus discovered this law, so instead of changing men, he changed himself. He said, "And now I sanctify myself, that they may also be sanctified through the truth." So he understood that as I clean myself, as I realize that my consciousness is the creator of reality, or my I am, as Neville would call it, everything around me changes. He found himself to be the truth of all that he saw his world to be. Truth is the sword that slays all but itself, and I am, your awareness, is the truth. Therefore, to be identified with anything other than being, so just knowing that I am, or limited by that, then being is to be enslaved, or limited by that with which you are identified. Again, all those labels, we take away our humanity. It is recorded that crowds left Jesus when he revealed the working of the law in this world, in these words, "No man cometh unto me, save the Father in me draw him, and I and my Father are one." In other words, no one's coming to me, law of attraction, unless my Father, which he was talking about his consciousness, draws them. They could not believe that they were the cause of all they saw their world to be. After thousands of years, it is still the great stumbling block to all who see the world as something to be changed on the outside. You and your conception of yourself are one. Your conception of yourself is the image you have made of your Father. This image fashions your world in your likeness, be it good, bad, or indifferent. If you would change your world, do so in truth by knowing yourself to be all you see the world to be. You are not what you are because of anything in the world. On the contrary, the world is what it is because of what you are. Big, big words. The what being the measure or value you've placed upon yourself. In short, your conception of yourself is the mold the conceiver, your true self, uses to people your world. Begin to transform the world by claiming yourself to be that which you desire to see expressed in the world. Isn't this a famous quote we've always heard? Be the change you wish to see in the world. But this takes it to a whole different level, that I'm literally creating the world around me. So if I think I'm a victim, that's going to be true for me. And victimizers are going to show up everywhere around me to victimize me, to show me the truth about my own conception of myself. It's not actually the truth, but because I'm a powerful creator and it's my conception of myself, that's always going to be brought back to me and revealed to me. And that's the problem with dicing ourselves up into these little labels, because it becomes true for us and for other folks. Freedom is not won by the sweat of the brow. Stop wrestling with the world. It is only a reflector. I am the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So in reality, to know yourself the conditioned is to be free from that which in your blindness you believed yourself to be. leave all, and just be me. With that, we're going to end with the 8 verses for training the mind. This book dives into every verse. Obviously, they're meaty, but just as a reading, it's pretty light, and I think you'll get the wisdom of it for this. May I always cherish all beings with the resolve to accomplish for them the highest good that is more precious than any wish-fulfilling jewel. Whenever I am in the company of others, may I regard myself as inferior to all, and from the depths of my heart cherish others as supreme. In all my actions, may I watch my mind, and as soon as disturbing emotions arise, may I forcefully stop them at once, since they will hurt both me and others. When I see ill-natured people, overwhelmed by wrong deeds and pain, may I cherish them as something rare, as though I had found a treasure trove. So rather than condemning and judging, only giving out love, seeing their pain. When someone out of envy does me wrong by insulting me and the like, may I accept defeat and offer the victory to them. Even if someone who I have helped and in whom I have placed my hopes does great wrong by harming me, may I see them as an excellent spiritual friend. In brief, directly or indirectly, may I give all help and joy to my mothers, and may I take up all their harm and pain secretly upon myself. May none of this ever be sullied by thoughts of the 8 worldly concerns. May I see all things as illusions, and without attachment gain freedom from bondage. I always love verse 6 that it says, even if someone who I've helped and in whom I have placed my hopes does great wrong by harming me, may I see them as an excellent spiritual friend. That is so counterintuitive for us. But what would that be showing us? It would be showing us that we were doing it to get something. And so when they weren't nice to us, we got offended. And it shows us that we were really expecting something. So this speaks about humility. This speaks about trusting others no matter what, loving others no matter what. And when we do that, because there's a relationship with everything that is, the more we love and trust others, regardless of how they show up, the more we will naturally love and trust ourselves. And the more we trust and love ourselves, the more everyone will show up around us in a loving and trusting way. And the more we take ownership that what is showing up around us is an effect and we are the cause, the whole world will change around us. But we can't do it for that reason. That's the trick that's so funny. That's the slippery slope. You can't do any of this to get something. You have to do it just because it feels awesome and because it brings happiness. Because it brings the peace that passeth all understanding. So that's how we'll kick off this week. Thank you so much for being here with me. And this week, I've got a big week. I'm actually going to Nashville, and I'm just really going to focus on trusting all that is, trusting on what shows up. And I'm excited to see how this plays in the space this week. I hope you do too.